Who do we have as we walk, Klaus, in the different meetings? What type of stakeholders do we have? The constituencies.
Stakeholders, we have, if I look at our stakeholders, we have business, of course, as a very important audience, and we have politics, we have continuous partnerships with many governments around the world, and of course we have NGOs, we have trade unions, we have all those different parts.
Media, of course.
Media, of course, and very important experts and scientists and academia.
You even have religious leaders, right?
We have religious leaders, we have social entrepreneurs, very important social entrepreneurs.
What is a social entrepreneur, Klaus?
A social entrepreneur is someone who personally taking the risks, working somewhere on the grassroots level, creates transformation.
Schwab set up a youth leaders group, and he's training people to be future heads of state. I mean, the head of state of New Zealand is a graduate from his. I mean, there's a lot of people that you'd be very surprised are graduates from, Klaus Schwab's brainwashing operation, the way I see it. But Schwab had the influence, the ability to bring in world leaders.
So we have to engage much more as a young generation, and that's the reason why we created actually two categories. We created the what we call the young global leaders, which are leaders between 30 and 40 years old, who have become already leaders, but also have shown their social commitment. And I was sitting 5 years ago with a group of those young global leaders, and since they have to be nominated before the age of 40, and they are nominated for 5 years, some of those are 44, 45. So I looked at them and thought how old they are. And that triggered the initiative to create a group or a community of global shapers. And we actually are now, this community is active. We have a hub in 450 cities around the world. We have one here in Boston. And in order to have the license to be a hub of the World Economic Forum, they have to do every year one community, they have to complete one community assignment where they show the social engagement. And I see here one of the big supporters of the young global leaders and our global shapers. When I mention our names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are for our actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And that's true in Argentina too. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with the president, who is a young global leader. But
who the feck elected this guy to be the ruler of the world, to be orchestrating the resetting of the world that nobody asked for? Who elected him? Who is he speaking for? He says we. Who is we? He's not speaking for me, and he's not speaking for you, and I don't want him speaking for me. I don't know who he is. His family history is a mystery. All we know is that his dad, his father, had been managing director for a Swiss engineering company, Escher Wyss, who continued operating in Germany throughout World War II. But his father has no name, and the company's records that the father worked at seem to have been wiped. That's not suspicious at all, is it? When he says we, I'm thinking he's talking about the 1% of the richest people in the world that make up his 1,000 richest businesses that make up the World Economic Forum's partners.
They each bring something different to the table. But Schwab is more on the economic side. He really believes in this Marxist, panacea, so to speak.
In the 22nd century, a book will be written about the entrepreneur of the 21st century. I'm sure that the person who will foremost come to the mind of those historians is certainly Bill Gates.
And in August 2019, suddenly the U.S. banks wouldn't touch anything to do with Europe.
Okay.
So the Federal Reserve had to step in, and that was August of 2019. It was clear at that point in time that everything was starting to change in the capital flows, and something serious was developing in Europe. By January, I know that, even Klaus Schwab had told people that he knew a virus was coming. That the World Economic Forum Schwab had sold all his stuff out, including stocks and bonds. Now, you wouldn't sell bonds unless you thought the governments are going to go down. So the computer projected we were going to have what ended up being the COVID crash.
Okay.
And the object is really to get rid of democracy.
Okay. In
Europe, to make people think they still have some sort of a right, you get to vote for an MP for Parliament. But Parliament has no power to write laws or overrule the Commission. The Commission doesn't stand for election. The head of the EU also is not elected. They're appointed by the other heads of state. So you have a political system there that has pretended to be a democracy, but has nothing to do with anything. So they've successfully eliminated the power of the people to actually overthrow the government at the polls.
We will certainly have to write a new rule book for the digital economy and the digital society. So covering everything from data to infrastructure, but also talking about security and democracy, technology, to fair taxation. All these are topics on the table with digital change. So, ladies and gentlemen, the need for global cooperation and this acceleration of change will both be drivers of the Great Reset. Will both be drivers of the Great Reset. The Great Reset. The Great Reset. The Great Reset. And I see this as an unprecedented opportunity. Finally, we also need to find new ways to do things. And this pandemic has shown us that we need to create multi-layered partnerships which bring together very different stakeholders. So the international institutions, but also the governments, the business community. But I'm also looking at philanthropists, so for example, civil society. We need this new multi-layer approach that we can deliver big ideas on the ground. So think global, act local. Think global, act local. Think global, act local. And I believe that the real test case for this approach can be the vaccine. Can be the vaccine. Can be the vaccine.
Έτσι ώστε το 2021 να είναι η χρονιά της μεγάλης επανεκκίνησης, μεγάλης επανεκκίνησης.
Ενδιαφέρον ανάγνωσμα έχει ο Πρωθυπουργός στο γραφείο του.
Ναι.
Και να διαβάσω και το tweet. Στην τελευταία μας εκπομπή είχαμε κεντρικό θέμα το Great Reset και έκανα την εικασία πως τα εξωφρενικά μέτρα δεν ήταν με γνώμονα την υγεία μας, αλλά τις εντολές αυτού του λόμπι. Η επιβεβαίωσή μας από τον Κούλι δεν άργησε καθόλου. Τσουπ! Κοιτάξτε τη φωτογραφία. Να το βιβλίο COVID-19, The Great Reset.
Those in power don't see it. So all they're concerned about is keeping power. So they'll get more authoritarian, more draconian.
When Klaus Schwab makes this prediction that America will not be a superpower, do you feel that that's an accurate prediction? Or, I mean, whether they're driving that agenda or not, do we see a shift towards China, which is, I think, what we're all concerned about?
Well, China after 2032 will be the new financial capital of the world. That's because we are committing suicide ourselves.
Okay.
Dividing the country like this, Biden saying, "Oh, the military, you have to be vaccinated," and I think it was like 46% were refusing to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
What is this? And then you stand up and say, well, U.S. will be there to defend Taiwan. Well, how are you going to do that if you're going to fire half the military?
Right.
There's an old lesson from politics. It's called the Nika Revolt that happened in Byzantine times in the 6th century. The people were revolting against the emperor, and the local police sided with the people.
Okay.
So that's why they want defund the police, get rid of the local police.
Because they know each other, they know the people.
Exactly.
This is their neighborhood. It's my brothers
if I
and
live
sisters.
next to you, am I going to shoot you?
Right.
History does repeat because of humanity makes the same mistakes over and over again. Rome fell basically from corruption internally, as we're seeing again here. They've always wanted somebody who's just a figurehead. Deep state, so to speak, is really what controls things. They have Biden in there, and he'll sign anything they stick in front of him, really. You're lucky if he can read it.
What is this really all about? The Great Reset, is it, why now? Like, what is it that needs to be reset? Is there something that's about to happen or is going on that we don't know?
Yes, from the economic side. So ever since World War II, now the governments are the biggest borrower and debtor in the system. So this whole thing is about when Schwab comes out and says, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. It's to pretend that they are doing this for you. That you're going to be eliminated, your mortgage payments, your car payments, they'll be all gone. Student loans, sounds good. But basically it's a front because it's the way government defaults. Okay. But they can't default. If they default, and what would happen is they wipe out everybody's savings, the pension funds, etc., which is what happened in the Great Depression. Schwab has sold the idea that the only way you're going to come out of this is we need more authoritarian forms so you retain power. I've argued on the opposite side of the table from him is that we can eliminate the debts by creating coupons and then swapping them to do a debt to equity swap. So then you would take these coupons and you could only invest it.
So is that a coupon given to citizens or given to people?
If you got a $1,000 bond, you get a coupon. Then you could take it to Klaus Schwab or whatever and say, okay, fine, it's good to buy equities.
Okay.
So small companies would have suddenly the funding would be there for them to actually grow. Most small businesses, 70% of them are turned down for loans. Right. So I mean, you could grow the economy tremendously if you stop competing against them. And what you have to understand about the climate change is that that's the agenda of the UN. The UN says no single country can defeat climate change. So their argument is everybody has to be subservient to the UN, and the UN make the rules and regulations. And that's where Schwab's little video, the U.S. will no longer be a superpower. Our arsenals will be handed to the UN, and UN will become the one world government.
Fourth industrial revolution is, it doesn't change what you are doing, it changes you. If you take genetic editing, right. Just as an example, it's you who are changed. And of course, this has a big impact on your identity.
The fourth industrial revolution will impact our lives completely. It will not only change how we communicate, how we produce, how we consume. It will change actually us, our own identity, and of course gives life to such policies and developments like smart traffic, smart government, smart cities. What we will see is that everything will be integrated into an ecosystem driven by big data and driven particularly by close cooperation also of governments with business, civil society. And this revolution will come at a breathtaking speed. It will be like a tsunami.
Like a tsunami in the fourth industrial revolution, you will own nothing, but you will be happy. That is an order. It gets worse. The World Economic Forum are now blatantly saying capitalism needs a dose of Marxism. As I say, it's not like they're hiding their sinister intentions.
Aujourd'hui, au bout de ça, on parle de puces qu'on pourra s'implanter. Ce sera quand ça?
Certainement dans les 10 années à venir. Et d'abord, on va les implanter dans nos vêtements, c'est-à-dire wearables, comme on le dit. Et après, on peut s'imaginer qu'on les implante dans nos cerveaux ou dans notre peau. Et à la fin, peut-être il y a une communication directe entre notre cerveau et le monde digital. Ce que nous voyons, c'est une sorte de fusion du monde physique, digital et biologique. Et j'ai vu que M. Zuckerberg a prédit qu'à la fin de l'année, il va avoir son robot, son butler personnalisé qui est à sa disposition.
Donc, comme dans Downton Abbey, on aura son butler personnel, son serviteur, son esclave?
Oui, mais il y a une différence. C'est un serviteur qui, avec l'intelligence artificielle, apprend et qui n'est pas seulement votre assistant pour des travaux manuels, qui peut vraiment être un partenaire intellectuel de vous.